Welcome back to One Out Racing, and last episode I was a bit of an idiot. I've changed some plans, I've made a few realizations, and I've started busting out the cool part. It is part 3 of the 899cc turbo build. Now there is one, or there's actually many things, but one of the good things about doing this channel is sometimes you'll watch back a video, whether you're editing it, or just went afterwards to see what a video comes out like, and you realise something that you didn't think about before. Either you find a solution to a problem, or something that you said you were going to do, you realised was actually wrong, which I'm going to go into in a minute, because I've come up with a whole new and much better plan for the exhaust for the actual turbo manifold. But we'll get back to that in a minute. The other thing I realised was, rather than doing lots of guesswork to figure out where the gearbox is going to go and how to route the turbo and make sure it was in the right place, I've realised as much as it would be nice to have this up at waist level to do it all, that actually having it on the floor with the gearbox on it and stuff just makes more sense. So I'm going to unbolt it in a minute. I'm going to move it down the end of the garage out of the way so I can get my new car in here at some point, bolt the gearbox on just sort of temporarily for now, and we'll go into clutches and stuff a little bit later on. And that way then, when I actually build the turbo exhaust, then we're going to be able to make sure it doesn't hit anything, make some brackets up off of the gearbox, and all of that. So with all that said, cue the best song in the whole world. Oh, sorry, wrong song. Let's try that again. It won't take a genius amongst you to realise that is not bolted up properly because of the gap there. And I've just realised that all the bolts that I thought I had, namely these, which I'll be honest, I thought were gearbox bolts, and they could be off of Sporting. I don't know if they're different threads or what. I've got loads of them, so it kind of makes sense they would be off of Fiat of some sort. But either way, I haven't got any bolts for the gearbox, but really, those couple of centimetres either way aren't going to make any difference to me, because really all I want to know is whereabouts that exhaust going to run up over here, and for the turbo to sit basically somewhere in this section here. Now it's going to get a little bit close to these, but we'll worry about that later. Okay, that's the engine now, back to where it's supposed to go, and I'm going to explain to you why I was an idiot in the last video. It happens, everyone's an idiot from time to time. Now I figured it was worth a look to see what we're working with here, and you can see what I mean. Once you've actually got the manifold, and then you've got the wire, the actual cables coming up here, it doesn't leave you a lot of space. Now, I was right, and I probably could come up between the reversing sensor and this area here, but that's going to be so hard to do that off the car. But I've had another idea, and I might be able to loop it round the end and then up through there. I did think about coming underneath the box, or maybe between the sump and under here, so I'll have to have a little look at that in a sec. And this is where things took a little bit of a turn. I actually did record a load more video now explaining how I thought I was going to make the exhaust. Then I hit a massive wall and realised that that was never going to work. So I'm going to let me explain in a minute about what happened, and I'm going to save you sitting through letting me talk about something that is never going to work out. So I'm doing you a little favour. So over to you, Ben, to explain what we found. So obviously in the last video, I did say that I thought I might be able to run it down and actually through this gap, which you can't really see very well, down through there. And I thought, actually, that's quite a good idea. But then I forgot that this pillowcase that I've got in here is stopping dirt and stuff going into my gearbox. And that's where the drive shaft comes out, straight across there. So that is not going to be an option, I don't think. Is anyone else noticing this is starting to become slightly more problematic than I thought? And that is when the idea came to me about a log manifold instead, which I think is probably going to be the way we're going to have to go. And I'm going to explain and show you what that is right this second, before we then jump to showing you some parts that have turned up and actually start making the exhaust turbo flanges. So a log manifold is basically exactly what it sounds like. It just looks like a big old log. So essentially what you have to do is you get the exhaust flange, like the normal flange, or the actual bit with all the holes in it, and essentially you have one long runner coming off it like this. So you join it with pipes, nice, literally straight pipe straight to it. Some people will use it where they have one of them is part of this main pipe, like that, and you just have an exhaust flange on the end. That's literally it. It's just a log manifold, and what that would mean is that it can just come straight off the side. Dead easy, super simple. Some of you may be watching this going, but Ben, that sounds like a terrible design for a manifold. And you'd be right if it wasn't for a turbo manifold. If you were going for a naturally aspirated one, then manifolds are obviously one of the biggest power adders or power killers, really. You want it to be equal length, you want all the nice smooth flows and bends, but with turbos, it just really isn't as needed. Not on this kind of level anyway. Obviously, if you're hunting big power, then yes, if you're trying to spool a huge turbo, then you need a decent manifold. But for this, all you're really trying to do is get exhaust out of your engine as fast as possible and as much of it as you need into the turbo to spool it up. After that, it really doesn't matter. So as long as you keep things nice and simple, then it'll be fine. So obviously it would add a little bit of extra expense, time and effort, but if I can't get this one to work, that's how we're going to have to do it. So we'll log manifold it up. Even though we're not using the stock manifold now, and we're going to have to make a log manifold, I do still want to use standard gaskets, so the one for the actual on the cylinder head itself, and for the exhaust side itself as well, because whatever we make, I want to be able to unbolt it and bolt it on nice and easy. So we're just going to make that happen. So cut to the footage of me making the manifold flange, and I'll show you some new parts that I bought as well. Now, to make life easy for you, obviously just take this off. And you can use this instead, because obviously the bolts and stuff will be in the exact position. Now, realistically, I might not be able to make this myself. We'll have to see. So the metal's going to be pretty thick. Now, the holes I don't have a problem with, and cutting it to shape I don't have a problem with. But that big hole in the middle might present a bit of a problem. So I do have a hole cutter, and I think will be big enough for this. But it's going to struggle to go through anything sort of 1/4 inch thick or whatever it ends up being. So if not, I'll be able to mark this out, measure it and send it away maybe to get laser cut. It won't cost a vast amount of money, but it'd be nice if we can avoid it if we can. So let's get the card out, take it from there. Okay, so it's going to position now and then. I have worked out something that actually this hole is significantly bigger, because obviously it's just a gasket, it doesn't need to be the exact size of the hole. So actually the one that's in there is a lot smaller, which I've got a hole punch or hole drill for, which should be just bigger than that. So it won't restrict anything. Now, as you can see, this bad boy has had some use, so I am not holding out a lot of hope that's going to get through anything too sharp. But I mean, I have got the pillar drill. Yeah, we'll just take it slow and steady, I think. Just like that. Now what I will do is cut this outside bit out, cut these holes out here, and I'm actually going to put this on top of there and then just push down on it to get the exact position of this center one. Now I know it's going to be pretty much in the middle, but just so we don't mess it up. Look at this cheeky little template. So that just holds the cut, stick it on. We'll go from there. Now, a little update. This is actually the next day when I was doing those videos, and I've ordered some 5mm thick steel plate. And the good news about that is it should be enough to make this, and potentially enough to make the actual flange for the actual turbo side as well. So actually the one that goes onto the turbo. Again, if we can drill it for this one, then we should be good to drill it for the next one as well. You will notice that where I've done this really simple triangle shape, it could actually have a little bit more in here. So what I might do is when I actually draw this onto the metal, I may just put a little bit of a radius to it just to give me a little bit more wall here, because obviously, as you can see, I mean, the hole isn't going to be this big. We'll have a look in a minute, but obviously I don't want it to be too thin on these edges, or I'm going to run the risk of it warping and stuff once it's actually bolted down. So as much meat as we can get on this, the better, really. That, until the metal turns up, is all we can do with that one, but that doesn't mean we have to stop. Why don't we look at new car parts? Because new car parts are fun. And anybody who hasn't used AutoDock, make it happen. It is a really good site to use stuff on. I think it comes from Germany. All the parts are generally cheaper, especially with Fiats. Some of the really hard parts to get sort of pop up every now and again on there. So I bought all my stuff from there, and it is super cheap. It's all turned up in one little box. Happy days. Now, the first thing I've got, which is very relevant, is a new stock exhaust manifold gasket. Now, we didn't waste the time earlier on in the video, but you remember we made this one, and I said it's going to need a little bit more on there, on that outside bit. Well, this one has got that on it. So I think what I'm going to do is combine the two. So I'm going to use this to draw around the outside, line the holes up, and then use this hole then to mark where the actual smaller hole is, because we're not going for that size. So happy days. It was about £2. The next thing we've got, new exhaust manifold gasket. I mean, I would argue if it had one on there, I probably still wouldn't use it, but it doesn't, so I bought one. Again, this was about £3 or £4. Crazy cheap. Now we're going to have to take the sump off at some point because obviously with a turbo setup, you need to get the oil back into the sump. I've already got a super easy way to do that, which you will see, and I did on my turbo one previously. Involves no welding whatsoever, and it worked a treat. But again, I'll be annoyed with myself if the sump leaks after I put it back on. So I just got a new sump gasket. I think this was a bit more expensive than I probably would have thought. It might be like £8 or something. Anyway, so that's all the stock parts from courtesy of Autodoc. Thank you, my German brethren. Now, the next thing I needed, and arguably the more important thing for what we're doing next, is this thick old piece of steel. Probably the weirdest thing I've ever got in an envelope, if I'm honest with you. Now, I'm a little bit worried about whether we're going to be able to drill this. Like I said before, it may well kill every drill bit I've got. It's only mild steel, so I mean, it should be all right. So I'm going to mark it out. Again, as you'll see, I've got more than enough to do the turbo side as well. So that's good. Get my Sharpie out, draw out all of the bits that we need. And I think this might be the one that I tackled first. Rather than going to all that trouble of drilling all the 3 holes and cutting it out and then only realise I can't cut this middle hole out, then we'll have to revisit what we're going to do about that. But I think we'll be all right. I've got a plan. So let me grab the Sharpie, let me get the pillar drill set up, and we'll do some stuff. So I've marked all that out. Now, one thing to bear in mind, which you may have already thought about before, if you're using a hole punch like this, you do need to get dead center. Otherwise, obviously, you're not going to drill it very well at all. So the way to work that out, and you can look this up on YouTube because there's some really good videos out there. They're about 30 seconds long. But essentially what you do is you draw 2 lines. So you draw one line here. It has to just be a nice round figure, 30 mil, 40 mil, something like that. Something you can half really easy. So you draw, this was a 30 mil line, and you do a dot halfway, so 15 mil. And then you do another line. It can be anywhere in the circle, but if you kind of do it a little bit of an angle away like this, it helps. It just has to be the exact same distance from it. So this is another 30 mil line with a dot, 15 mil. And then you get one of these, and it does get a bit tricky when you've got a big chunky old ruler like this. And you draw a 90-degree line from that dot. And then you do another one from this dot, 90 degrees. And where they cross is dead center of the circle. Now, obviously, I will say it's easier to do when you're not doing a fat Sharpie and a bit of a weird ruler. But that's it. It's close enough for me. Sorry about the random spinning thing on the drill then. Now you might wonder why I've only drilled through a little bit. Now this pillar drill is variable speed if you bother to take the bout off and change it. Otherwise it goes a little bit fast. So I might try and turn it down to do the drilling here. But anyone who knows, when you're drilling steel, slow is usually faster, because if you build up too much heat, it's going to blunt these off. It's just not going to do anything. So you want to take it nice and steady. So if I can get this slowed down, we'll do it in the pillar drill. Otherwise, it'll be in the vise, and I'll do it with the hand drill, so we can just take it nice and steady. I would rather do it in the pillar drill because it is, quite frankly, much easier. So let's take this cover off and see what we can do. And this is what I've been talking about. Now, I have never amended this. I've never changed it, which is stupid, really, because I think it's always been running way too fast. But obviously, that's the drive end. This is the end for the actual drill itself. In theory, then obviously you're just changing the gearing. Now, I'm going to have to try and get my brain around the fact whether how much smaller and bigger I need to go, but obviously they need to be level. Either way, I need to undo this little clip, and there's like one bolt around there, and in theory the motor should lean forward. I could take this off, and there'll be a little bit of trial and error to get it going as slow as I want. I did have to mess around with it a little bit. It was still going a little bit too fast. That video you just saw then of me starting, it was going way too quick. So in the end, I just stopped being lazy. And I messed around with it a little bit more. We had a few things come undone that weren't supposed to come undone, bout slipping, that kind of thing. But I've got it going super slow now. And as if by magic, I chopped it out. Now, it's not the cleanest cut ever, but it'll do. But you can see it is a messy job. Now, you might have seen with the toothbrush, I had an old toothbrush, I was putting two-stroke oil on it. It's a little grind hard plumbing trick. I saw him putting like automatic transmission fluid on there, gearbox fluid, obviously, watching too many American programs. I think it just helps to sort of cool it, give it a little bit of lubrication on there, stop it blunting your stuff too much. But either way, that is done. I don't think there's going to be any problems drilling out the 3 holes for the actual bolts and then cutting it with a grinding wheel. Easy peasy. Grinders will go through anything. So otherwise, yep, take your time and you can make it happen. So we're one step closer to getting the first parts we need to mock up our exhaust manifold. But as you can see from behind me, because obviously the episode's come out, my Ignis Sport's here now since I started filming the turbo build. So this is going to have to take a back seat just for a little bit while we get on top of this. But in the meantime, I'll order all the new pipe and everything for the log manifold, any other little bits and bobs that I need. And then we'll take a crack from there. But what I am going to quickly show you now before we go, so there's a little bit of a cherry on the cake, seeing as it feels like we maybe didn't achieve quite as much in this video as I'd liked, is the new purchase for the turbo build, which I mentioned in the last video, and it is good. Ho ho! Check out that. I know. It's a little bit overkill. I mean, it's like a Borg Warner official one. It's not even like a Chinese knockoff. It's got billet internals. It's a KO4, but it's got really small compressor housing and stuff on it. It should spool up super quick. And it was cool. I mean, it probably cost more than a Cinquecento if you pay full price for it. But I didn't. I got a wicked deal on it, which I'll go into another time. But either way, it's going to be a sweet turbo for this setup. And I just cannot wait to see it sat against this 899 engine, which is probably almost the same size as, in all fairness. But either way, stick with me for some more builds on this when it comes up. But in the meantime, hope you enjoy the Ignis content that is coming, because I am really looking forward to getting this car on the road. So either way, thank you for stopping by. As always, don't forget, if you want to support the channel, everyone says it, I don't like saying it, but don't forget to subscribe, because I've got a lot of people that are watching that aren't subscribed, and it helps me out. But if you don't, it's cool. Anyway, I will see you soon. Stay safe, stay one out racing, buy stupid cars. Just look at that. It's going to be so good.